Political elites are morons. They are all people without any military or real life experience. They all went through, they never served in military. They do not understand anything about real economy. They are the guys from the whiteboard theories. And as the result, especially in Europe, it reached the critical mass that in the end we have morons. And the point is, you cannot explain to them. They will continue to deliver this delusion. I mean, it's delirium, essentially. You know, they think that they have leverage.
Yeah, and I think that Putin. I think I have a clip here from that conversation you're talking about here. We'll play in just a second, but I think that what our viewers are going to see here is some real frustration on Putin, and not for the reason that you may think. Because, and he didn't say this in there, but I'm kind of interpreting, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong after this clip, but I think that his frustration is that this war could have been prevented with following the Minsk Accords. It could have been prevented with the December 2021 offer. It could have been ended quickly in Istanbul the first time, and so forth. And yet, and then last summer was the last real opportunity that Putin offered here. They keep rejecting these offers to their harm. Here's what he said yesterday.
Yeah.
You said that no economy in the world can be self-sufficient. That is true, but we still need to understand what economic self-sufficiency means in the modern world. We need to understand this. Second remark, we cannot be intimidated by these new possible sanctions. We must not be afraid. Whoever starts to get scared loses everything right away. But it is absolutely necessary to understand what could happen, and we must be prepared for any actions by our potential future adversaries. They do many things to their own detriment. It might seem that they definitely won't do this or that because it harms them, but they still do it, the idiots. Sorry, please. How else? The world's leading economies are sliding into recession just to harm us. It's like buying tickets and not going just to spite the conductor.
How do you see that Putin's frustrations there? What's the core?
It's frustration of Russia. Russia is doing very okay. Russia is doing fine. It's the fact that, he's frustrated with them and he almost drops it. That's why he says, oh, pardon me. He almost drops like...
I've never seen him talk like that.
He almost drops it. Mr. Lavrov, however, already known to drop it, but it was in relation to Saudi foreign minister. He actually went into direct profanity. That's who they are. They are morons. I mean, and when he talks about the leading economy, what leading economy? I mean, UK is a third world economy now. Remove the Rolls Royce and a couple of other. It's a crap hole. Pardon me. You look at Germany, which is they will be poor, and so every European economy is pathetic, really. And then, of course, these guys do not have the most important thing, of which we talk nonstop. They do not have real militaries. What they have, those are, that is why they are so kind of butthurt. But when they recognize that basically it doesn't matter what they do, they cannot provide proper, the only tool which defines the balance of power in the world. And it is military as first derivative of the very developed, very massive military and industrial economy. They don't have those economies. Simple as that.
Now, you mentioned earlier the issue about how can Merz and Macron and Starmer, how can they make these comments because and these demands, because they don't have leverage to enforce the demands here. There was an interview on the BBC here recently with the chief diplomat of the European Union, Kaja Kallas, who I think she thought she was with the friendly BBC reporter so she could just say the talking points she normally does. But as you're going to see here, and in one other we have next, is that this time the reporter's asking the questions that you and I would like to ask. Watch this one first.
But do the EU and UK actually have any leverage at all over Russia when it comes to pressurizing them to agree to a ceasefire?
We have a lot of leverage. I mean, together with our transatlantic partners, I mean, the leverage is economical, and that is sanctions.
But if that, forgive me, if that was working, the war would be over.
Yeah, but we haven't had the strongest sanctions. I mean, if you think about where their money for fueling this war comes from, it comes from oil and gas. We haven't put strong sanctions on that.
Why not?
Because we haven't had an agreement on that. And again...
What is it that you're waiting for?
Well,
3 and a bit years.
You know, that is, again, I mean, you know that I would do it immediately.
She had no answer for that. And by the way, I want to correct the reporter there. It's not that we haven't done it. Kallis is wrong too. Remember, I think in the first 6 or 8 months of the war, we had an oil cap, a price cap on the Russian oil. That's going to bring them to a heel because they use the exact same logic, except it didn't work. So what logic does anybody think that something's going to work now, deep into the 4th year of war, when it didn't work before?
Well, she's delusional. She's Estonian. She is Estonian from the actually family of the Communist Party apparatus guy, you know. And so suddenly she's kind of, you know, bouncing from this to, well, essentially rabid Russophobia. It's not Russophobia. It's actually hatred of Russia. She hates Russians. She hates them for all kinds of reasons, cultural, racial, what have you. But she's stupid. What do you expect from her? And the point is that they do not understand the real economy. That's what I'm trying to constantly, you know, say nonstop. And that if you do not have understanding of the world, if you do not have especially serious understanding of how militaries, real militaries, not Wehrmacht, I mean Bundeswehr, or let alone UK army, how real militaries are built around, based on what, and what is the real scale of economy. They do not understand that. None of them does. They are all products of the degree mills in the West, from Ivy League in the United States to all kinds of Sorbonnes, Oxfords, and everything. They don't teach them real things. They don't teach them real history. They don't teach them real economy. They don't teach them nothing. They go there to get credentials in order for them go through the corrupt channels up to the European bureaucracies, be them in the European Commission, or as, for example, I introduced my good friend, Colonel of the Central Apparatus of Military Defense, Vladimir Trukhan, was talking to the deputy chief of the Russian delegation to the OSCE, Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, so-called. And this diplomat, I have this wonderful discussion, and actually it could be translated to English. He said, you know, when you talk to those people, to those Europeans, they say, oh yeah, we have enough dogs and we have enough police force to beat down any kind of the uprising against us. That's, he quotes, you know, that's who those people are. They know nothing. The only thing they know is how to, you know, grab on the sinecures and how to continue whatever the current thing. And the current thing, which always was the part of Europe, Europe is now returning back to its roots. It was to hate Russians and envy, covet what Russia has. And as the result, we have the situation today.
Okay, so there's one thing that puzzles me as well. And I think it's inherent in what Vladimir Putin was saying a few minutes ago, because it's one thing to have a narrative. You have a preferred outcome. There's we have Commodore Jeremy on our show a lot, says that the European Union is basing policies off an idea of preference, while Russia bases one off of the reality on the ground. So that's, you're going to have a mismatch there. But when it comes to your own interest, it would seem that the spin would come to an end, because you're not going to want to spin yourself into harm. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. This next clip here with Kallis, again, she's called out on something that nobody in the West likes to talk about very much, but it was brought up here, and that is how much money they have sent to Russia for Russian gas.
But according to the Centre for Research on Energy and Clean Air, last year the EU spent 22 billion euros on imports of Russian oil and gas. That's more money than was sent to Ukraine in financial aid. No. I mean, that just seems crazy.
That is crazy, but of course it's not evenly distributed. I mean, some member states and many member states are not spending anything on Russian oil and gas, but there are a few member states who still do it because it seems cheaper in the short term. Although, you know, longer term, we actually end up paying much higher price like we see right now.
But do you accept that is enabling President Putin to continue his war?
It is enabling President Putin to continue its war, and that's why we need to do more.
You can see at the end of that clip there, she kind of like, yeah, we just need to do more, knowing that every word that just came out of her mouth is nonsense because, yeah, we want to take Russia's money. We want to take their, the money they have impounded, et cetera, and use that for Ukraine while the West is sending this money to Russia. Because if the Europeans actually believed that Russia was this mortal enemy and that they wanted to do everything they can to stop, they would have cut off all the supplies. But that's just in the last year. We're not even talking about in the first year when it was a higher percentage. But the fact is, and we're going to see Viktor Orban in a minute, who is particularly upset about the cost. And actually, Robert Fico is even more aggravated because of how much it's costing his economy even to have this reduced amount. But that's who's looking at the reality here. But why in the world will Europeans keep going ways that harm themselves and contradict what they're saying with their own policies?
Very simple. Let's recall 1941, 1945, unified Europe, not Germany, not just Nazi Germany, but Finland, Hungary, Romania, Italy, French SS divisions, the Netherlands divisions, and all they go to what is called historic Russia, which at that time was called Soviet Union, and they killed 27 million Soviet citizens, a majority of them civilians. So yeah, this is what Europe does. The greatest prose in the world, arguably the greatest prose in the world, War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, it's about unified Europe going 1812 to kill Russians. And you look at this at history, and you see yourself that Russians have the proverb, it's saying, it's kind of humorous, that every 100 years, the Europe goes to Russia to get its own ass handed to him by Russians, and so this is what they do. This is what they want Russia's resources. And as the result, the hatred, and especially supported by the elites, and especially as it was presented and gestated by the United States also after the post-World War II period, so they back to their normal European self. And many people, Putin already knows that, but majority of Russians know that Europe is existential enemy of Russia and Russian people. And that's the whole thing. Polls are there. Majority Europeans don't view Russians as Europeans, and very many of those Europeans view Russians still as Untermenschen. So, and when you look at this is totally natural. And the fact that, some leaders, which are obviously representative of not very large countries, Hungary or Slovakia, or they are not very large countries. They are important countries, but they are not very large countries. Majority of the politics and majority of the views of the European people and European politics is driven by the, fanatical hatred of Russia. And that is why you get this schizophrenic, that's what schizophrenia is.